Hey, this is Andrea, and welcome to the Voice of Influence podcast. Today I have with me Paul Shustak. Did I say that correctly, Paul?
Yeah, that's great.
Okay, great. And Paul, we met in California,
We
Hollywood,
did.
at a movie studio. How often can you say that you met somebody at a movie studio?
Sounds intriguing. Tell us more.
Yeah, so we were both in attendance for the United Nations Women's Peace and Humanitarian Fund inaugural gala. I think I said it all that right. Did I say all that right?
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah. Um, it was an amazing evening. Do you remember what led you to that event?
So it's one of those events where people donate by purchasing a table. You have dinner, and a friend of ours had purchased a table, and I believe they couldn't attend. So they called us up and said, "Hey, would you like to go to this event?" And we obviously couldn't say no. Yeah, and
Yeah.
we were seated at the same table with Andrea and some other interesting folks.
Yeah, you guys just it just worked out we ended up sitting next to each other and got to know each other a little bit. But the event itself, just for anybody who doesn't have any idea what we're talking about, was to raise awareness and funds for this Women's Peace and Humanitarian Fund for women who are basically in war-torn countries and doing amazing work um, promoting peace.
Yeah, and the idea, which was so profound to me, was that women should be on the front lines of this effort. And it's just amazing that it's not the norm, but they're trying to make it the norm.
Yeah. Yeah, and one of the reasons for that being that typically women are going to come to the table with the desire for peace, whereas a lot of times men will come to the table more with guns and the desire to win and conquer.
Seems like that is playing out in our world. And I also think there's just a different mindset. Who knows what women would bring and how they would change the world. Like, I think it's unpredictable, but can't hurt. Let's
Yeah,
try it.
yeah. So, so what a great it was great to meet you there. It was great to get to know you a little bit. But as we got to talking at the table, you said that you are co-founder of um AsqMe. And so let me just start by saying thank you for coming and sharing. I know that you've got a lot of startup background, and I was wondering if we could just start there with what you guys do. So I noticed that you have a talk that you gave, and that talk had to do with how thought leaders or creators can capitalize on curiosity and turn questions into opportunities. So would you tell us a little bit about the company and what you're doing?
You bet. So AskMe is a platform that helps creators turn questions they receive from their audience into opportunities. Okay, so what does that mean? At a practical level, if you are a creator and you sign up for our service, you are assigned a unique link. It's a URL that you can copy and paste into your social platforms. YouTube is where we've started, but we're also starting to see creators use this on TikTok and Instagram. But I'll give you the kind of case study for YouTube. In fact, it'd probably be helpful to just understand how this whole idea got started. And that was my wife and I bought a new house a few years ago. As a YouTube fanatic, I went on YouTube a lot in order to solve different problems we were having, like getting new tile installed, getting an HVAC system fixed, all the things that you deal with around your house. Except this was a particularly intensive time for us because we had just moved in and the house needed work. So of course I turned to YouTube and I found all these amazing creators who are helping me solve these problems, giving me the practical advice I need. but the videos don't answer in many cases my particular question. So I start looking for a way to contact these creators, and I realize there really isn't. You can email them sometimes, but they're not incentivized to answer back, and they're overwhelmed with questions. You can leave a question in the comments, but it's a similar situation. You'll be lucky if you get a coherent, useful response, because they're not incentivized to answer questions. There's a whole other story there we could get into, but so what I found was a need on the part of the audience member to get their question answered, and this hypothesis that creators on these platforms would want to use a service that could give them an incentive to answer questions. So fast forward about a year later, we have a product in market that's growing pretty fast, and we've proven that hypothesis. If you're a creator on AsqMe, as I said earlier, you get this unique link, you paste it into your social profile, and you tell your audience, hey, if you have a question for me, click the link above. That'll give you fast, direct access to me if you have questions. And so creators are promoting their AsqMe link, and audience members are clicking the link, they ask questions, and they pay typically around $10. It's the average price right now that they're paying a creator for an answer. You get 2 follow-ups, and we find pretty high rate of satisfaction among the audience members. So that's the, yeah. And I should say, when we talk about opportunities, it's not just about the amount of money a creator can make by answering questions. They can do other things, like they can upsell a audience member on another service, like a coaching service, or maybe a class that they give. Creators are using these social platforms to as marketing vehicles to fund or grow other businesses, like a coaching business or a online class. A lot of them have affiliate links. They'll get a small commission for products that you purchase using their affiliate link. So this type of engagement is like this very sort of deep, intense engagement that a creator and an audience member have when they're trying to solve a problem together, is an opportunity for the creator to also engage with the audience member and open them up to other ways they can work together, and other ways that the creator can make money, not just by making $10 on answering a question. Right. So that's the itch we're scratching.
Right. So it's like deepening the relationship, strengthening that connection, potential for additional working together because you have a good relationship.
Yeah. And also driving the audience member back to your content. So you can provide a link to some other content that may help them answer the question, or a point in time in the video that they're asking about that may answer their question more concisely.
Interesting. So what kinds of, okay, you mentioned coaching, and what other kinds of creators are using this and with success that you find that people are actually really wanting to ask these questions?
Sure. So we launched in private only 6 months ago. So
wow,
this has only been something we've been publicly promoting for the past 3 months.
Wow.
And what I've learned about startups, and the philosophy I take, is what I call a search for product market fit, or you might call it an experimental approach. And so to answer your question, we started with a hypothesis, and my methodology is to test a hypothesis using a simple and fast approach as we can, capturing data that will validate or invalidate the hypothesis. So the first few months of this journey were focused on a particular type of creator. Again, my source of inspiration was my home, and I thought that creators who do sort of home repair DIY content would be our target audience. And so that was the experiment that we ran at first. We targeted them with a product that was designed for that type of creator, with a marketing campaign that was designed for that type of creator. And so what we found is, yes, they were interested, but there were other types of creators who were also interested. So to answer your question, it's a very diverse and interesting bunch right now. And the challenge we face is knowing where to double down next. We have creators who are in that home repair DIY space. We have creators who focus on health and wellness. We have creators who focus on finance. We have creators who focus on vehicles, vehicle repair and purchase. So we're getting a lot of interesting data about what types of creators are interested in this, and at some point in the next few weeks or months, we're going to run another experiment, and I think it's probably going to be auto focused creators, and see if that's also a niche that resonates.
That's really interesting. So like just before you and I got on, my son, who's 14, and he's my IT guy right now. We were discussing, I've been trying to figure out what I want to do for podcast setup, like with camera and all that kind of stuff. Definitely, I'm very slow moving on this, but we bought a camera because I watched a video on YouTube, bought the camera, bought a couple of the things that go with the camera in order to make it work. And now I'm like, I think I'm missing a few pieces. Like I don't know how to make the camera, get the video connected to the audio. And I'm not exactly sure how to get the video back over to my computer. And I don't even want to have to deal with it. Like, I'm sure there's answers out there somewhere. But if I could go to that person on YouTube who told me what to buy, and oh my gosh, it would be worth the $10-20 that it would cost just to get the answer quickly and know what to do and not be sitting there wondering.
Well, I'm sorry that you're having this problem, but I'm also excited that you see a potential solution in what we're doing. And that's you're me a year ago. And unfortunately, not every creator has the link yet, but it's growing, and maybe in a year or two, your creator, or 6 months, your creator will have that link. So you could suggest it to them. It's one of the marketing vehicles that we're considering.
That's cool. Okay, so do you mind sharing a little bit about your background with startups? Because it seems like you're just a startup guy. Like tell us about your background with that, why you got into startups, what makes a good, person to focus on startups.
Sure. So my journey starts with, I call it the first chapter of my career. I spent about 13 years in the tech industry, working at big tech companies, leading product teams. I was at Microsoft and Adobe and Sony. Also worked at a startup, and I learned a lot about how to develop and design and market new products, and that's what I love doing. But there was also something frustrating about it. In the big company world, I felt things were moving too slowly for my taste. A lot of politics got in the way of doing the right thing for the customer or the business, and I wasn't able to work on some ideas that I thought were interesting. So first chance I got, did a startup with a friend of mine and took a big risk, and we built a company. This was back in 2009. So built that company over a series of years, 3-4 years. We worked on that, eventually got acquired. And I've been doing startups since then, just trying to get better at it. Started 5 companies since then. 2 have been acquired. And so what I think you asked, what interests me about this process? Well, I look at it a little bit like being a hitter in baseball. In baseball, if you hit 300, you're considered pretty great if you do it consistently. It's similar with startups. The failure rate is so high that you'll never bat 1,000. But I've learned some things over the years that I think have increased my batting percentage. And then sort of the methodology and the philosophy sort of converged or gelled after I sold my last startup. This was in 2020. Decided to start a consulting firm focused on innovation, either working with new startups or startups within larger companies. It's called Unlock, and Unlock sort of became the way that I was able to apply what I learned about startups to help other founders and other companies, other teams. And what we do at Unlock, it's still going, although I have a new job, which is co-founder at AsqMe, is we help companies achieve product market fit faster than they otherwise would without additional waste. And again, it goes back to this experimental approach. Basically, don't assume you know what the customer wants or what their problem is. You have to run experiments to test hypotheses and use the data to iterate on your product or your market. One or both could be the problem you're having.
Yeah, cool. So so the basic hypothesis of experimentation then, I guess, is there anything that people get wrong when they're trying to experiment? Like any one particular thing that you see a lot?
Sure. The most common problem is what we call solutioning. So when you design a product, you're only going to succeed if you're solving a problem for a customer. Let's take the iPhone, right? The iPhone actually solves a lot of problems for people. It does a lot of things. But if you were developing the iPhone from scratch, I would advise you to focus on the problems that your customer has and design a solution around them, because it may not be an iPhone. They may not need an iPhone to get directions or do email on the go. It turned out that the iPhone was a pretty good idea. So start with the problem your customer has, work backwards from there. And the other important thing is don't do this in a vacuum. Talk to your potential customer to understand what their problem is and what solutions might solve their problem. Instead of, the opposite would be, hey, I've got a great idea. I'm going to build an iPhone and I'm not going to talk to anybody. And I'm going to build this thing right now, starting out with the goal of a fully realized product. That's the other mistake people often make. I'm going to build this fully realized product because I know it's going to be a success. Well, good luck to you. I would advise building a small experimental version of your product and go from there.
There you go. That's really important. I mean, as an idea person myself, I love my ideas, and it is hard not to consider them precious and like, this is the solution, which is part of why I started the podcast in the first place, was to actually talk to people and get out there more and understand what people were looking for. And of course, like experimenting some too, with programs that we've done and whatever. And it's just, so of course, while you're talking, I'm thinking through all these things that we have done in the past and kind of where we're at now. So anyway, I completely understand the temptation to just go with the solution that you want. But I also really have seen the importance of understanding the customer and their problem.
Andrew, And it's so hard, and I still don't follow my own advice 100%. So don't beat yourself up. I would say that to the audience. Don't beat yourself up, but you can improve starting today.
That's great. Yeah,
It's a
yeah, yeah.
muscle. Exercise the muscle. It'll get stronger.
There you go. Okay, so people who are into startups, they must be okay with not seeing it to completion. Like there's and also you take so much risk of like this might fly and it might not. So tell me about how you've navigated the ups and downs and the risk and the, like what gets you, what's more motivating to you than the potential fear of failure?
Yeah. Well, what's motivating is solving a customer's problem and building a sustainable business around that. Like, to me, that's the holy grail. Because you can solve their problem, but you might not have a sustainable business, in which case
It's true.
you're only going to solve it for a little while. So that's what motivates me. And then you brought up a really good point, which is you might fail. You probably will fail. And so there's this sort of Zen detachment that you need to have, whereby you believe that you're on the road to success, solving that problem, building a sustainable business. But at the same time, you're okay with being wrong. And being wrong might not mean you fail. Being wrong might be that you're wrong about the solution you've developed, or how you're marketing that solution, or who you're marketing it to. There's a quote from Mark Andreessen, which I like, which is great. What is it? Great, strong ideas loosely held. Okay, firm ideas loosely held, and like that's kind of the approach. You have to have strong ideas, but be ready to be challenged by the reality you face in the market.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. I really like that quote. That's a good one. Um, so as you're kind of, here we are at the end of 2024 or 2023, looking into 2024, um, what challenges are you guys facing, or what opportunities are you seeing for the next few months? I'm sure as a startup, you're looking at months, not years.
Yeah, that's right. It's months, quarters at most. I think our biggest challenge is going to be building out the team. And the first few hires at a startup are so crucial because, well, first of all, you have very little room for error. If the person doesn't work out, replacing them is sort of like replacing the engine on a plane going 600 miles an hour in midair. You want to avoid that. So hiring the right people and giving them the right direction and management oversight, but at the same time creating an environment and a structure where they can operate autonomously, because in a startup, it's just you're always lacking some measure of structure. And as the founder of a company, you're never going to have enough time to be the hands-on manager that you'd like to be. So I think that's our biggest challenge. Also, I'd say remote work. We're a remote team right now. It's likely that's going to continue. So having people be remote increases those management challenges.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you look to build a team, what are you looking for? You're looking for people who can operate autonomously, but you said, um, anything else in particular, like qualities that you're looking for?
Yeah. I would say for us, it's going to be a blend of experience in the industry. We call it the creator economy. My co-founder, we came to this with no experience in the creator economy, and it turns out it is an industry unto itself. And we are fortunate to have people on our team who have experience in the creator economy, but that's one of the areas of experience we're looking for, or what we will be looking for. Autonomy is going to be huge. So people who are used to operating autonomously, and in doing so, that they are focused on, really I think of it as the Pareto principle of focus. The 20% of tasks or initiatives that drive 80% of results. People who are able to do that, who've done it before, and even more importantly, do that in the service of the customer. And that means really understanding what their problems are. And if we can get people like that, we're going to fly.
Yeah, that's good. So when you think about management and giving some sort of direction, you mentioned not having a lot of structure as a startup, but also at the same time then needing to give some sort of direction. What are the things that you believe are most important at this stage? Really, really close to the beginning here, but when it comes to structure, what pieces of the structure are the most important to you?
Yeah. So at this stage, I think the way this proceeds, like, we have company goals, but we are getting close to the point at which we need to set individual goals, or work with the people on our team to set individual goals. It's a small team. There's 6 of us, including myself and my co-founder, and then we have a number of contractors. So a big next step, is going to be having those conversations about individual goals. The most effective approach I've used is something called OKRs. I'm sure you're familiar with it. Maybe your audience isn't. Objectives and key results. Really good way to align the top level company goals with management goals. So we'll probably employ something like that in a lightweight manner to start.
Yeah. So let's see here. I don't want to get ahead of myself too far because I've got a few questions that I want to make sure to ask you. So when you use those, if that's what you're going to do, or setting these goals, and then holding people sort of accountable. I don't know if that's the word that you would like to use for it. I know that sounds a little but it's important that people be accountable to their goals. So in what ways do you do that? What ways do you hold people accountable or check in or support them through the process of achieving these goals?
Great question. We're going to be inventing that.
Yeah. Okay.
But what I've done in the past, I think, provides sort of roadmap. So with OKRs, you're required as a manager to set objectives for the company or the department, and then the managers in the organization define the key results that they will deliver in order to meet those objectives. So I imagine we already have the company objectives. I imagine we'll sit down with the team members and get them to propose the key results. For example, one of our marketing goals is to hit a certain number of creators on the platform. Okay, so what would be a key result that a marketing manager could deliver there? It might be start an advertising campaign on Facebook, that will enable us to acquire 1,000 signups at a certain cost. Great, that's a great OKR. Okay, we've got that. It needs to be time bound. So when are you planning to achieve that? Let's call our marketing manager, Jane. Jane, when are you planning to achieve that? In 3 months. Fantastic. Okay. is it, and the other filter, I've used to set these key results, is it attainable yet ambitious? We want people to stretch. So check. Okay, fantastic. We're going to have a one-on-one every week or every 2 weeks, and we will discuss progress. In between those meetings, this is a data-driven goal, so we're going to have data. Presumably, we'll be able to look in our dashboard and see how we're doing on the quantitative side of this, and that's another way to hold Jane accountable.
Yeah. Cool. That's I like that. So when you think about the managers that you're going to be hiring, the people that will be working, I think in particular managers, I'm in particular interested about managers who are attempting to lead while at the same time meeting key objectives that you're talking about. So when you think about those people, what are some of the biggest challenges that managers in those positions face?
Yeah, great question. I think it starts with hiring. That's my biggest concern. How do you hire the right person for a job and a company that is going to be very different a year or 2 years or even 6 months from now? And I have not been encouraged by the results I've seen through interviews and references. So, what we are doing in the practice that I've come to rely on is to give people tryouts. So,
yeah, experimenting like you experiment with your product.
Yeah, exactly. And we actually just had a really big success in that area. We were considering hiring a senior manager, and we tried a person out who was good but not great. And so, rather than hire that person, we gave them a project to work on, and it was not an easy call, but we decided not to make that hire. So I foresee more of that. And then the challenge there, though, Andrea, is finding people who are available to do these test projects or consulting projects. If you have a full-time job, you may not have time for it. It may not fit your sort of mindset about how to obtain a job, and it's a bit of a departure from how most companies work. But again, I think that's the fact that somebody is willing to engage in a process like this is a signal to us that we may have found the right person. So we're going to be starting another one of those experiments, a consulting project for a key hire in a couple of weeks, and that's it's also a slow process. It doesn't it's not an interview loop and then thumbs up or thumbs down, right? So
yeah. So I think that is a really interesting way. It's not the first time I've heard of doing that, but I think that makes a lot of sense, especially for a startup, especially when you're just trying to figure it out. Who can help build the plane while it's moving?
They can, right? If they're adding value during one of these test projects, it's even more helpful. And I was just thinking back to my days as a manager at a big company where if a hire didn't work out, there was typically other people on the team who could pick up the slack. Just don't have that buffer at a startup. And also the first few hires really matter. Like there's this great quote from Steve Jobs, maybe you've heard it, about talks about how A players attract more A players and B players attract B players. Well, you want A players. So if that's true, and I think it is, you want to start out by building a management team that's, that's a level.
Yeah. 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 It seems like the tryout process would be appealing to somebody who's ambitious, who's ready to prove themselves and not afraid of that, which
Yeah.
you would think would be a good fit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any other thoughts about certain skills that you think are important for management positions?
Uh, yeah. Empathy is a good one. We've talked about customer focus and autonomy. And I think empathy is huge. Like, whether you're trying to solve a customer's problem, or you're working with a vendor or a partner, or you're managing somebody, you have to be able to put yourself in their shoes, because at the end of the day, you're solving problems for the people around you. And the most obvious one is a customer. Well, how do you solve problems? You put yourself in somebody's shoes. But it's the same for somebody who works for you. They have problems, you need to solve them. With a vendor, you're going to have to solve problems in that relationship. So I think empathy is huge. The other one is this experimental mindset, like having built that muscle up, where your go-to isn't to spend a lot of money and a lot of time on a solution that you're confident in. It's to go step by step and iterate. I think that's huge.
Mm, yeah. Very good. Is there anything else that you want to tell us about your current company, AsqMe, or how creators or people in those areas that might be interested in it could get involved or learn more about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can go to askme.com, ASQME, askme.com. You can sign up there. There's no credit card required. You can use it, we like to say, for free, but we take a small percentage of whatever you earn using the product. And I would love to hear from anybody who tries it, because we're in a very fast learning mode. So you'll have my attention. If you have a problem or some feedback, you can
Yeah.
reach me personally. And I would say, if you're a creator, expand your mindset such that you view questions as opportunities. Like, what we found with creators is they get a lot of comments and questions. And the frustration they have is comments are easy for them to respond to. They can give a thumbs up. If I said, "Hey, Andrea, I love your podcast," you say, "Great, thanks, Paul." And that might even be a canned answer or some cut and paste. But if I ask you a question like, "Hey, Andrea, I want to start my own podcast. Can you tell me the top 3 things I need to focus on?" You might be like, "Oh, wow, this is tough. This person has a problem and they, sincerely need a solution. There might be urgency there. Um, and I have to sort of research this answer that I'm going to give them." It's stressful for creators. So the message we're trying to send them is, hey, look at this as an opportunity. This question is an opportunity to engage with this person at a deeper level. And you could charge a little bit for an answer, or maybe there's a way that you can work with them that will ultimately pay off for you. So thinking of questions as opportunities, that's a mindset that
Hmm.
we're trying to evangelize.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. Well, Paul, I'm so glad to reconnect with you a month after we first initially met. And it seems like, the opportunities that people have, there's so many questions that people do have. And so there's certainly so much opportunity. And so I am really excited for what you guys are doing and the potential for helping connect connect people with their audience and even, that intermediate kind of level. One more question for you. So this is the Voice of Influence podcast. What last piece of advice would you give to somebody who wanted to have a voice of influence? And maybe you're going to answer this from the point of the creator. Maybe you're going to answer this from the point of the co-founder of a startup, whatever you think.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I would say two things. I think it's super important to help drive the culture in your company, to participate in that process, particularly at a startup where the culture is still forming. Maybe you work at a big company and it's fully formed, but there's culture at the lower levels, right? Your team has a culture. Your organization has a culture. How do you celebrate wins? What are the sort of variations that you and your team sort of bring to the culture? Because even at a big company, company culture is something that you need to riff on, iterate on, experiment with. So take your company culture seriously and either contribute to it or riff on it. Do interesting things with your team. Okay, so that's number one. And then the other one is stand up for your company culture. If you see a process or a person that is counter to that culture, take it seriously. Find a way to bring that person or that process back in line. And sometimes that can be really hard because you're afraid of reprisal, or you're afraid other people might not take your opinion seriously. I really encourage people to be courageous on that front and find ways to express their concerns, because that's how companies get better. That's how teams get better. That's how you get better.
Oh, great pieces of advice. Thank you so much, Paul. Thanks for being a voice of influence for our listeners today.
Thank you for the opportunity. And I can reach at Shustak at AsqMe.com if you have any questions for me about anything at all, or if you want to try out our product. Thank you so much, Andrew.
And you can find your Ask Me button on LinkedIn too, I noticed.
You can go to my LinkedIn. Yeah.
There's that too. All right. Thank you so much.
See you soon, Andrew. Bye-bye.